Hi, this is Dr. DocAmitay, registered clinical psychologist. In my previous video, I was discussing using medication to treat various issues, and I implored people to take the most responsible, adaptive approach to this type of treatment. Now, I'd like to follow up with something that's less well known but equally important and equally controversial, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, the DSM. The fifth edition is supposed to be coming out in 2013. It's been delayed for a number of years. I want to be very clear. Since the DSM-1 up until the DSM-4 TR today, and then going on to the DSM-5, we've been increasing the number of what we consider disorders dramatically. Now, that might not necessarily be an issue except for a couple of problems. Number one, when we start stigmatizing what might just be normal, natural, healthy behaviors, it might be annoying, but they're not necessarily illnesses, but then people get labeled as such, that's a concern. Number two, equally concerning, is that for many disorders or many doctors, they would like to think that the first line of defense against these so-called mental health issues is medication. And what they don't tell you is that many of the doctors involved in the DSM-5, as it was with previous editions, have links to the drug industry. Now, sometimes they're benign. For example, if the drug company is funding some research and a psychologist or psychiatrist or researcher is part of the study, then their name may get connected with the drug company. It doesn't mean that they are in their back pocket. It just means that these companies funded the research. And the fact is, aside from the government and drug companies, there isn't that much money out there for funding this type of research. So many researchers have to go that route. But in other cases, the connection is much more concerning. For example, the psychiatrist who promoted labeling young children with manic depression or bipolar disorder never disclosed that he has very strong connections and has received money from the drug company that is making the drug that he has recommended to be used to treat young children. Now, most people who've seen a 2 or 3-year-old might say, yeah, this kid's acting out of control. Their moods are all over the place, they're having temper tantrums, etc. But this is not a disorder. There may be some cases. I don't work with children directly in this capacity. I don't assess them. So maybe there's a few cases where a child may actually have bipolar disorder. Maybe medication is warranted in a few cases. But in many other cases, these children are getting very serious psychotropic medications. And then they have to have other medication to counterbalance the side effects and so on. They're pumping themselves up with drugs at such a young age when their brains and their bodies are still developing. And this may be doing more damage than good. We don't know enough about it yet. Do yourself a favor. The first thing you should do is go to Wikipedia and check out David Healy. Dr. David Healy. He's an Irish psychiatrist. He had a huge controversy at the University of Toronto and the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health because of his advocacy for learning more about drugs before we start prescribing them to people. There's a great story. It's a sad, scary story, but you will see why he's so hated by certain colleagues and industries, whereas he's praised by others such as myself for being brave enough and having enough integrity to put this out in the public. So do check that out. That's the first link you should check out. And just realize that just because certain things are being labeled as a problem or a disorder doesn't make it so. Probably the most famous case that everybody is probably aware of is ADD, attention deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, where far too many children have been mislabeled as having this disorder. And the treatment for this disorder is a stimulant. Okay? It's a drug that if you don't have this disorder, it gets you all hyperactive. Now, somehow it seems to work. It helps people concentrate, helps them focus. And the reason for this is still not yet well known. If you read the literature and you look over the last number of years, the original literature basically said, we don't know. It's almost equivalent of hitting an old TV that would make it finally sort of straighten out. It's kind of like with shock therapy or electric convulsive therapy in the past, where we weren't quite sure why it worked, it just seemed to work. Now, over the years, they are coming up with explanations for why this stimulant might help people who are hyperactive calm down and focus. But it's not carved in stone. We still don't know exactly why it's working, and that means we're not quite sure what kind of effect it's having on the person's physical brain and other aspects of their health. And these are young children who are still developing. So we have to be very, very careful. And make no mistake about it. I am not denying that ADD or ADHD does exist in some people. It does seem to be an organic or a brain related issue in many cases. But in most other cases, it's just a matter of the child not being raised properly, however you want to define that, and then they're having trouble regulating their mood, sustaining attention, focusing, and so on. This does not necessarily require medication. If it does, then please, for your child's best interests, maybe explore it. But before you do, please read up on it, because the number of deaths now that are being attributed to this type of medication or other concerns is alarming. And I don't mean to single out ADD or ADHD, but this is the one that most people know about. And this is the one that most people would say, you know what? It seems that they're throwing this label on kids because it's a shortcut to dealing with problematic children. Whereas the real root of the problem may be at home. It might be the parents. It might be the child's temperament. We don't know exactly, but please do your research. And mark my words, when the DSM-5 comes out next year, or go to the website right now. I think it's dsm5.com or .org. You can check it out through Wikipedia. You'll see the website listed, and take a look at some of these proposed disorders. And you might get kind of concerned when you see what we're going to start labeling as a mental health issue. Now, a competent, ethical, intelligent psychologist or psychiatrist will be able to diagnose properly. But sadly, not everybody actually meets those criteria or those descriptors. So we may see many cases in the near future of people being sadly misdiagnosed and being perhaps fed medication when they don't require it.